Welcome to our fascinating journey into the world of zoology. Today, we are going to explore one of the most spectacular natural phenomenon on Earth, avian migration. Imagine having to travel thousands of miles every single year just to survive, without any GPS or modern technology. Millions of birds do exactly this, navigating vast oceans and continents with pinpoint accuracy. In this lecture, we will uncover the biological drivers, the incredible physical endurance, and the mathematical energetics that make these epic journeys possible. Let us dive in. To begin our exploration, we must first clearly define what we mean by avian migration. In zoology, migration is not just wandering around. That is called nomadism. Instead, migration is a highly structured, predictable, and deliberate two-way journey. Birds travel between their breeding grounds and their wintering grounds on a regular, seasonal basis. Why does this matter? Because understanding this predictability allows scientists to track populations and study how deeply ingrained this behavior is in their genetics. It is a matter of life and death, driven by the fundamental biological need to find food and a safe environment to raise their young. Now that we understand what migration is, let us look at why and where these birds travel. Typically, migratory birds breed in northern latitudes during the summer, when resources are abundant. However, as winter approaches, these areas experience freezing temperatures and severe food scarcity. To survive, the birds must travel to southern latitudes. This massive undertaking is not a random choice. It is triggered by specific environmental cues, such as changes in day length and drops in temperature. These cues signal the bird's brain that it is time to leave, ensuring they escape before the harsh winter conditions make survival impossible. Understanding these seasonal movements leads us to realize just how crucial migration is for the entire planet. Migratory birds act as vital indicators of global environmental health. If a migration route collapses, it is a massive red flag, signaling severe ecological problems, such as habitat destruction or rapid climate change. Furthermore, these birds physically connect ecosystems worldwide, playing essential roles in pest control, pollination, and seed dispersal. From a human public health perspective, tracking these flocks helps us predict and prevent the spread of diseases like the avian flu across international borders. Without migration, many species would simply go extinct. Knowing the immense distances these birds cover, we must ask, how do their bodies handle such extreme physical stress? The answer lies in massive physiological preparation. Before taking off, a bird's body undergoes incredible changes, most notably the rapid accumulation of fat. Unlike humans, who might rely on carbohydrates for quick energy, birds fuel their migratory flights almost entirely by burning stored body fat. This is because fat is the most energy-dense tissue they can possibly carry, providing the maximum amount of energy for the minimum amount of weight. This preparation is absolutely critical for continuous long-distance flight. This biological reliance on fat brings us to the physics of energy consumption. Biologists use a simplified flight range equation to estimate exactly how far a bird can travel based on its fuel reserves. The formula is D equals V times the fraction F over R. Here, D represents the maximum distance the bird can migrate without stopping, measured in kilometers. The variable V stands for the average flight speed in kilometers per hour. F represents the total mass of stored fat in grams. and R is the rate of fat consumption in grams per hour. Conceptually, if a bird increases its fat storage, F, the maximum distance D increases. Conversely, if strong headwinds increase the consumption rate, R, the total distance drops drastically. Now that we have our formula, let us see this with a concrete example featuring the Arctic tern, famous for the longest migration of any animal. Suppose this bird has accumulated a fat reserve of 30 grams, and its body burns fat at a rate of 0.5 grams per hour. We first need to find out how long it can stay in the air. We use the time component of our equation, where time equals total fat divided by the consumption rate. By dividing 30 by 0.5, we find that the bird has enough fuel to fly continuously for exactly 60 hours. This is a massive amount of time to sustain intense physical exercise without a single break. Having calculated the total flight time, we can now determine the maximum distance the Arctic tern can cover. We are given that the bird's average flight speed is 40 kilometers per hour. We take our previously calculated time of 60 hours and multiply it by this speed. Distance equals velocity times time. Multiplying 40 by 60 gives us a total distance of 2,400 kilometers. Physically, this means the Arctic tern can safely cross a 2,400-kilometer stretch of ocean without ever needing to stop, perfectly demonstrating the incredible efficiency of fat as a biological fuel source. So we have successfully used the flight range equation to find distance. This brings us to an important question. What if we know the distance a bird must cross, and we need to find out how much fat it must store before taking off? We can derive a new formula by rearranging our original equation using basic algebra. We start with our main equation for distance. First, we divide both sides by the velocity to isolate the time component on the left side. We know that distance divided by velocity gives us the total flight time. This logical step sets us up to solve for the required fat mass, which we will complete in the next step. Continuing from our previous step, we substitute the total flight time into the equation. This shows us that the total time in the air is equal to the total fat divided by the consumption rate. To isolate the fat mass, we simply multiply both sides of the equation by the consumption rate. This gives us our final result. The required fat mass equals the total flight time multiplied by the rate of fat consumption. The intuition here is very straightforward. If you know how many hours you will be flying, and you know how much fuel you burn every hour, multiplying them together tells you exactly how much fuel you need to pack before your journey begins. Now that we have derived this new formula, let us apply it to the bar-tailed godwit, which performs the longest known non-stop flight of any bird. This bird flies directly from Alaska to New Zealand, covering a staggering distance of 11,000 kilometers at an average speed of 55 kilometers per hour. First, we calculate the total flight time by dividing the total distance by the speed. Dividing 11,000 by 55 gives us a continuous flight time of exactly 200 hours. Imagine flying for over 8 days straight without ever stopping to sleep, drink, or eat. This highlights the extreme endurance required for transoceanic migration. With the flight time calculated, we can finally determine the total fat the godwit must store. We know the bird will be flying for 200 hours, and its body burns fat at a rate of 1.2 grams per hour. Using our derived formula, we multiply the 200 hours of flight time by the consumption rate of 1.2. This results in a total required fat mass of 240 grams. To put this physically into perspective, a bird that typically weighs around 300 grams must nearly double its body weight in fat before beginning its epic journey across the Pacific Ocean. Having explored the energetics of flight, we must also appreciate how these birds find their way. Look at the diagram on your screen, which illustrates 3 primary avian navigation mechanisms. On the far left, you see the stellar compass, where birds use the position of the stars in the night sky to orient themselves. In the center is the sun compass, which is time compensated, meaning the bird adjusts its internal clock as the sun moves across the sky. Finally, on the right, we see magnetoreception. The globe shows Earth's magnetic field lines, which birds can actually sense using special proteins called cryptochromes in their eyes. Together, these mechanisms teach us that birds are essentially flying biological supercomputers. We have covered a tremendous amount of ground today, so let us summarize our key takeaways. First, remember that avian migration is a necessary seasonal journey driven by the search for abundant resources and optimal breeding conditions. Second, to survive these non-stop flights across oceans, birds undergo immense physiological preparations, most notably accumulating massive amounts of fat as fuel. Third, we learned how to use the flight range equation to mathematically model the absolute physical limits of these journeys. You have now seen the incredible biological engineering behind bird migration. By understanding these concepts, we can better protect global ecosystems and ensure these magnificent travelers continue to grace our skies.